My name is Shubham Tiwari. I'm a solutions architect with AWS. I basically specialize in modernization and generative AI and security. So in today's session, we are going to talk about the basics of generative AI. Where does the Amazon's tech stack comes in when you talk about generative AI? We'll talk about Amazon Bedrock. We'll talk about the Amazon Q. We'll talk about one of the modernization service that we have that has generative AI capabilities, and then we'll walk through the console to see all these things, that how does Q developer works, how does the Q business works, how does the Bedrock console looks, all three in the so these kind of demos we'll have in the second part of thing, but we'll start with the basics of everything. So till the slide comes up, I'll just start the basics and then we'll go through deck by deck. So before starting the session, do you guys have an idea about what generative AI is and what large language models are, what small language models are? You have a basic idea about it, or should we start from the scratch? Anybody has an idea about what generative AI is, what the models are? Okay, I'll start. So the generative AI, like the word says, generative AI, it's just a subset of the bigger artificial intelligence that you know. So it's a deep learning part of the artificial intelligence that we know. Now, what differentiates it from AI/ML or the normal AI models? It's nothing. It's just the amount of data that it has been trained on, and it has been always, when you talk about any of the AI model, it's trained to do a specific task. Either it's a machine learning model or it's an artificial intelligence model. Same way the generative AI models are also trained to do a specific job, but they are being trained on a large set of data. So when we talk about the normal artificial intelligence or the machine learning models, there you need to deploy all these models, so you need to put an extra effort out there. What has been done with the generative AI space is that now the models are already being trained, and not just from Amazon. You've got models that have been trained from a lot of other players as well, from Meta, from AI21, from Anthropic. You've got models from all these players. So now you just need to use it. So what generative AI is ideally doing is it's just reducing that stigma that for using any artificial or intelligence model, you need to go ahead and train the model, and reducing the operational overhead that you're going to do into it. Like, for example, if you look into the ChatGPT, so similarly, the ChatGPT gained so much attention in the last span of 1 or 2 years because the ease of using it. At the end of the day, it is also using a large language model, but the ease with which you can use it, that gives it the edge out of it. If somebody would have told you 3-4 years back that I needed something as a chatbot to do these things, to basically answer my questions, it would not been so easy for you to think about it, because you must have first thought, how can I train the model to do this job, and then create a chatbot which could be an interface to do all these things. But now, with the advancement of generative AI, with this large language models, what has been done is that the models are already done. When we talk about large language models or the foundational models, they are a model, an artificial intelligence model that is trained on a large data set to perform a specific task. When I say specific task, that could be anything. That could be extraction of text, that could be image processing, that could be creation of images, that could be creation of videos, that could be anything that you think. Each model is being trained to do a specific task, and now otherwise what was in a previous environment, maybe if you step back 3-4 years back, these models were trained and deployed and tested by you, but now you just need to consume. The models are already been trained, you just need to consume it at the end of the day, and that differentiates the generative AI space from the normal AI, where the models are already being trained to do a specific task, and models are not trained on a small data set. They have been trained on a large data set at the end of the day, and you just need to consume that either through an APIs or through basically deploying it, anything. But that's what generative AI is, that you just, how do you basically, AI, if you split the term, AI which is used to basically generate some content, it was started with a word that it will generate a new unique content, but that's a different story. It's just you need to think about that when you already have a large language model / foundational model. They both are the same terms. You will hear it continuously in the next part of the slide as well. You will also hear this in day-to-day world as well, the large language models or the foundational models, they are the same things. They are the generative AI models which are basically trained to do a specific task and has been trained on a large data set. That's what these things are, and these large language models are used to generate or create new content or basically act as to do a particular task. That's where the generative AI space comes in picture. You got an idea about it? What does it say? Anybody has any question? Because again, this will be the basic on which we'll talk about. Afterwards, Bedrock, Q will be a different story. But you need to understand what AIML is, what generative AI is, what large language models is, what foundational models are. All these basic things you need to understand it. What new we have done when you talk about generative AI, how it is different from a normal AI. You got a basic clarity about that? Perfect. So in the slide deck, what we'll do, we'll just start with a generative AI stack of it, where it talks about that how AWS sits in all of the in creation of generative AI. When I said generative AI, there are multiple ways to it. Now at the bottom layer is that you can create your own large language models as well. Somebody has gone ahead and created the large language models or foundational models. But what do you need for that? You need a large amount of data for that. You need a neural network for that. So AWS also has got the architecture or has got the resources or infrastructure where you can go ahead and train your own large language models. But is that needed? No, not for us. It is a specific companies that can do that job, that are specifically doing that job. But do we need to do it? No, we don't. We don't need to get into the complexity of training a large language model or training a small language model, SLMs or foundational models, because some bigger enterprise are already doing that. We just need to utilize that large language model to our use case. But yes, on the bottom layer sits the infrastructure where if you want, you can go ahead and train your own large language models or foundational models or small language models. How do you do it? You can either do it on a normal servers, EC2 machines. We have got a specific servers which have a specific chipsets backed by Trainium to an Inferentia to basically train your models and inference your models. That's one part of it. And you've also got a managed service. If you guys have worked on AIML in AWS, you must be aware about a service that is Amazon SageMaker. So Amazon SageMaker is an AWS service which is used to basically test and deploy your machine learning. So you can write, you can test, you can deploy, and you can inference your machine learning algorithm in AWS using the Amazon SageMaker, which is a fully managed service, where you don't need to manage the infrastructure, on top of which you are writing the models, you are testing the models, and you're deploying the models. It's fully managed by AWS. So same Amazon SageMaker you can go ahead and utilize to write your own models which you're trying to do. That's the bottom layer of it. We'll not get into that layer to avoid the complexity, because we don't need to get into that, because we don't need to create large language models or foundational models, because there are plenty of them that are already created. We just need to utilize it. That's the core objective. That's the flexibility of generative AI we are talking here about. That's what I told in the initial, that what separates generative AI from a normal AIML model is that it's first, it's the amount of data it has been trained on. Second, it's ease to use that model, because it's already been created. You can just directly go ahead and consume it or use it. Then comes the second layer on the bottom. Then comes the middle layer, where you can just directly go ahead and consume the large language models. How do you do it in Amazon? You do it through a service that is known as, have you guys heard about Amazon Bedrock? So yes, Amazon Bedrock is an AWS managed service which helps you use these foundational models. So it's a service that provides you catalog of foundational models from multiple vendors. So in Amazon Bedrock, you will not only find the large language models from Amazon, you'll find large language models from all the leading foundational model providers. You'll find the model from Anthropic. Claude being a very, if you heard about the Claude, the performance that Claude model gives is one of the best out there. So you'll get models from Anthropic for all the Claude models like Haiku, Sonnet, and other things. You'll also find models from Meta. You'll also find models from DeepSeek. You'll also find models from Amazon. You'll also find models from Stability Diffusion. You'll also find models from AI21. You'll also find models from Luma available there as part of the catalog of foundational model that we have. How can you use it? The easiest way to use, and it's very easy. You just need to consume it through an API. So you just need to integrate Amazon Bedrock's API into your application, and you can directly go ahead and use it. So no training of model, no testing of model, no deploying of model, no inferencing of model. It's just a direct consumption of foundational models from all these leading foundational providers through a singular API. Through a single API, you can just go ahead and use it. There are multiple ways to use it, but yes, it's so easy that you don't need to do anything. You just need, you can just directly go ahead and consume those, use these foundational models through a singular API. Any doubts on that? Anything? So yeah, it needs to be an interactive. So if you guys have any doubt or you're planning something that what you're trying to build, you can just pitch in the between that. How can I build that? This is a doubt, and we can talk about that, because again, the more and more interactive session it is, the more it will be utilized. It will be for all of us will be in a better space to talk about it and see what scenarios we are trying to build. How is Bedrock going to be useful in that, or how is Amazon services going to talk about is going to help you in that space. We're going to have that. We are going to basically have that the demos as well. But yes, you need to understand the basics of it, then you can do it. So we talked about the bottom layer of the generative AI stack in AWS. That was how you build large language models on AWS. Then we talked about Amazon Bedrock. That is how can you basically use the foundational models that are already available in AWS using a singular API. So that's what Amazon Bedrock is. Now I think next part may be confused. I'll just wait for the deck to come in. So the next part would be basically how you can use the Bedrock, how you can, so it's again same thing. I'll tell now. So one of the basic component of the generative AI space or the foundational models or the Amazon Bedrock is prompt engineering. Now what is prompt engineering? So if you guys have used ChatGPT, everybody has used ChatGPT. So when you use a ChatGPT, the more accurate input you give to the ChatGPT, the more accurate result you get out of it. That's what is prompt engineering. Prompt is the input that you give to the foundational model, and then the output is you get from is the output. So now what it is, so if it's just an input, why does it involve so much as a prompt engineering there? Because it's a full concept out there. Because more accurate input you give to your foundational model, the expectancy of it to give an accurate output increases. So there are multiple ways to provide prompt to your foundational model. It could be that you provide a single shot, you provide a zero shot, you provide a logical reasoning to it, you provide basically you split your logical reasoning into multiple components and then do it. So there are multiple ways to do it. So that's why prompt is very important component that spans across the generative AI use case, across the industries. Some of the popular being that you have got chatbots, you've got the virtual assistants, you can use for search summarization, you can use for content creation, you can use for code generation, you can use for document processing. Some of the common use cases which we see the customers using this Amazon Bedrock or generative AI on whole for. Customers use it for chatbots, customers use it for virtual assistants, for maybe summarization of their documents, for code generation, very popular concept right now, for fraud detection, for process optimization, for document. There's a common use cases that we see while people use generative AI. So this was the stack that I was talking about. So if you look into the three components, you'll see that there are three different on the lower stack. You have got the infrastructure where you can go ahead and train, like I was saying, you can go ahead and train your foundational models. So you've got the specialized chips which I've talked about, the Trainium and Inferentia, which you can use to train your own foundational models. Then you've got Amazon SageMaker, which I was discussing, which you can use to basically, it's a fully managed service to go ahead and deploy your large language models or foundation models. So that basically sits in the lower stack of it. Then we started talking about the middle stack of it, which is where the Amazon Bedrock comes in picture, which is how you can use or build LLMs and other foundation models. This is for training your foundational model, and this is how you can directly go ahead and use the foundational models and utilize your foundational models to do any task. Now when I say any task, you have seen the use cases that Bedrock been used in. That could be for chatbots, that could be for virtual assistant, for document summarization, for text extraction. It has multiple components to it. So here you basically go ahead and train your foundational models. Here you basically go ahead and how you can build any tool that uses the foundational models directly through an API and can use it to do it. Then there comes the multiple components of Amazon Bedrock. We'll talk about in detail that what are the guardrails, what are the agents and customization capabilities, but this is what it is. And then comes the top stack, which we'll discuss in the later part, where the applications are also built based on the foundational model. You just need to use it. So the popular example which you may not see here, which is open source, that is ChatGPT. So ChatGPT sits at this layer. So this is how you use the foundation, you create the foundational models. This is basically how you utilize foundational models to create a tool, and this is how an applications are already built using a large language model. You just utilize the application to do a job. So the application is also built. So it's just utilization at the end of the day. This is for building in any tool or anything. This is just to do a specific job, like common example I've told a ChatGPT. You can think about a coding assistant. So coding assistant is already been trained to code, assist you in coding. We'll talk about Q developer in the later part of the slide, but yes, that is where it sits in picture, that how you can use a particular application to do a set of job where the foundational models are already doing that job for. So you don't need to worry about which foundational models, what is the which foundational model is being used there, and how are you using it, what have you written back of it. It's just the Q means at the end of the day you just need to go ahead and use that application to do a particular task that it is trained to do. And second, if you want to let your tools to, if you want to build something, for example, you want to build a chatbot for your enterprise customers, you want to build a virtual assistant, you want to basically do and go ahead and do a document processing, a document summarization. That's where you use the middle component of it, the Bedrock, to use let any of the foundational models for the document summarization consume it through an API and then use it for a document summarization. And if you want to create your own large language models, not large language models, for a small language models as well, mini large language models as well, then you can use the later part where you can use the Amazon infrastructure to train those models using either an Trainium and Inferentia based EC2 machines or SageMaker, which is a fully managed service to do it. The stack is clear because again, this again forms a very base of it, because you need to understand that what service you need to use means what service you need to use when do you need to use a large language model, when do you need to use the application that already has a large language model on back of it, and when do you need to train your models. This is clear? Perfect. Yeah? No, the API comes at this layer. So this is the API layer of it. Here you don't need to worry about one. API comes at this layer. So this is Amazon Bedrock. We'll talk about this in detail in the next slide as well. But yeah, so this is how you consume any large language model through an APIs, because Bedrock, like I said, it's a catalog. It's not just a service that offers you foundational models from Amazon. It is a service that offers you catalog of foundational models from multiple vendors. So here you can consume those foundational models. Every model has an ID attached to it. You can use any of the foundational models directly through an API and build anything which you want at this layer. This you directly get an application like a ChatGPT. You don't need to do. You don't know what model the ChatGPT is powered by. You don't know what model the Amazon Q developer, which is a coding assistant, trained on. You don't need to worry about that. There is an application that is already using a foundational model on back of it. You just need to utilize an application as an application, like use other applications. It's just that application is powered by a large language model. And this layer, it's just proper, you do everything from the scratch. Any more questions on this? I mean, again, this is again going to be a very basic of it, because you need to understand, like we were discussing in the starting as well, when you wanted to implement a large language model or let's leave that, when you want to implement any of the generative AI use cases, you need to it comes from a top-down approach. You need to understand where you're sitting, what's your operational efficiency, what's your use case, and then think about where do you want to place yourself. Do you want to just use maybe an Amazon Bedrock and consume its API to do a particular job, or directly use an application that is already built on a large language model and perform those tasks, because you don't have people to write those APIs as well and just integrate your APIs with your application as well. Or you are a company which are going into a space where you are trying to create large language models or small language models for end customers. Because recently I met one of the customer in my last visit in Chennai. The customer is trying to create a small language models, which is because they are into Tamil vocabulary. So, and they have a large data set around it and very decent data set. So they are trying to create not a large language model, but a small language model, which will basically be used for a translation from English or other languages to Tamil. And now how unique are they from other vendors? Because the kind of data they have is very unique. They deal with all specific Tamil vocabularies and everything. So data set is pretty unique. So that's where the use case is. That they are trying to create a model which at the end of the day are going to sell it to the other customers and get it in the market. So if you are thinking into a space where you have a data set and you have a use case and you want to build your large language models or a small language models, you need to think at the lower layer of it. So this is where you need to think that what I want to do, how I wanted to do, what is my operational efficiency, what is my use case, and which layer I'll sit to achieve that thing. Make sense? Perfect. So you can go. I think we've already talked about. So this is again the same thing. SageMaker, Inferentia, Trainium we talked about. SageMaker, you can build and deploy ML models at scale. I explained it. So again, Jumpstart talks about the other foundational models. So these are the foundational models that are available. So there are also some apart from Bedrock, there are also some foundational models that are available on SageMaker, Jumpstart as well. I told you SageMaker is a fully managed service where you can go ahead and train your foundational models. But there is a part of SageMaker, that is SageMaker Jumpstart, where you will get a lot of other foundational models which you will not find in Bedrock. Like you'll get foundational model from Hugging Face. You'll get foundational model from A20 models, you'll find it. So you'll get Hugging Face, TensorFlow, PyTorch, Upstage, NCSoft, Lighton. These are models you'll not find in Bedrock. Now the question may arise, shouldn't we use a model that are available on if the models are available here as well and the models are available on Bedrock as well, what's the difference between it? When to use what? So the models which are available here, it's not an API based models available. So these models you need to deploy on SageMaker, create an inference endpoint, and then use it. So there is some kind of effort that you need to put there to basically deploy that model as well. So models are available, they are tested, but you need to go ahead and you can't consume it directly as an API in Bedrock. You need to deploy these models into a SageMaker, create an inference endpoint, and then use that inference endpoint into your application to it. That's one part of it. But if you look into the larger picture of generative AI and things, it's not just limited to large language models. There are a lot more other things to it. We'll talk about it in later part of slide. So if you deploy those things into a SageMaker, if you deploy your foundational models into SageMaker, you need to do all those things on your, so you need to have a self-managed infrastructure for it. When I say self-managed infrastructure, there is a lot of things that are going to come into it. Large language models have right now become a very small component of what the generative AI space has become. We talked about, you must have heard about the RAG, you must have heard about the agentic AI, you must have heard about the flows. These things are not plug and play available in these SageMaker Jumpstart Studio. Yes, you can use these models at the end of the day. If you need it and you don't find it, and it's not there in Bedrock, you can just use it. But if your model is available in Bedrock, you ideally should use that, because you get all these options of knowledge bases, the RAG, which will get in the next slides, the agentic AI, the Bedrock agents, the multi-agent workflows. How do you basically manage those workflows using step functions, strands, and other things in the later part. These things you will not find in SageMaker. Here you need to create your workflow on your own. You have to manage the workflows on your own. So that's the thing. It's again a trade-off between the operational effort and what you're getting in return of it. Make sense? Anyway. So I think we've talked about Bedrock a lot. So Bedrock is again same thing. It's just a service which offers you a catalog of AI models from multiple vendors at a single place, which you can consume through APIs. Then you also have got options of, we'll talk about in later, of customization of models. Some of the models you can use the RAG based approach. We'll talk about what is RAG. You have got options of agents. Like I was telling you, we have moved out from a LLM to RAG. Now we have moved out to an agentic AI space, because we're not too much into a reactive space right now. When you talk to the LLM space, when you talk to the large language models, it's usually a reactive space. You talk to the model and you get the response. It's a reactive approach. But when now, from last 6-7 months, you must have heard about the agentic AI a lot, because it's a proactive approach of doing things, where agent can do things for you at the end of the day. And so it can do it. You don't need to put inputs to it. You just need to define when this agent should be triggered and what should it do. So it's a proactive approach of doing things, not a reactive approach when you go ahead and query a large language model to give you an output. So that's why we are moving slowly from an AI, from a generative AI or a large language models to a large language models plus a RAG based approach. Now we have slowly moved out to an agentic AI space, and we'll see about QCLI and other things in the later part. So that's the part of it. These things are a fully managed plug and play available in Bedrock directly. And then obviously the security of it, the security, how you can manage when it comes to the space of generative AI, the kind of privileges that you get, you also get a lot of shortcomings out of, and you also get how can you manage the security, the privacy of your maybe the chatbots, the virtual assistants, and all those things that you're going to create at the end of the day. So the security and privacy also sits at the top of Bedrock, where you have got multiple triggers to pull in Amazon Bedrock for security and privacy. Any doubts on this? Anything you want to specifically discuss at that? Yeah, I think security would be there in the later part, but yeah, anything? Okay, what is the vector DB? No, what is the? No, I'm asking what was the? You use Elasticache. Okay.
So the thing is, yeah, I mean, if you're changing the model from like through the Bedrock, this kind of the vector database needs to be upgraded,
you can
right?
create that same thing. So if the vector DB is what I think it's, you said Elasticache.
Yeah, right.
AWS Elasticache.
No, currently we are using like Elastic DB.
They are managed service.
Okay, so when you talk about also in the console as well, you have a fully managed services. You have got vector DBs out there, so you can again push your data source that you're using as a RAG based approach here. Again, use the embedding models to convert it into and use an AWS with vector DB, because it's again a plug and play. If you wanted to use some other thing, again you need to create the full pipeline or use a self-managed version of it. You can't use a context or a RAG-based workflow that is sitting somewhere else within Amazon.
What my question is like, if you are currently we are using different architecture, okay?
Yeah.
If you are migrate to Bedrock, so can we able to change the models, because like we know that like in future years like more models will come, right?
Correct.
So we train from one model. Okay, then if new model come, like
Okay, you're saying in Bedrock only?
Yeah, in Bedrock.
Yeah.
It's possible. Like,
Yes. I'll show you in console as well.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Okay. If you want to move, so see, these two are two different things. So you can use that RAG-based context with another model as well. That remains at the. Can you go back? Go to. There is a good. Yeah, go to the next slide. No, next. Next, go to next slide. I'll come to, there's a slide, I think third or fourth slide would be from here, that slide only. So this is the set of the the vendors that you get in Amazon Bedrock, the models, like I said, AI21, Amazon, Anthropic, Cohere, Luma, Meta, and everything. Go to the next slide. You can go to the next slide. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so the next slide would be RAG only. So the common ways how you basically talk to a foundational models, or how you can customize the foundational models, are these two things. We talked about the prompt engineering in the starting, that prompt engineering sits at the very basic of it. How do you talk to your foundational models at the end of the day? For example, like I said, prompt is nothing, it's just the input that you give to a model. So more better input you give to a model, the better output you can expect from foundational model. Then, like RAG we were discussing, RAG is a retrieval augmented generation way of not customizing, but providing a context to your foundational models. When I say context, if you have an enterprise data, or we have a very specific domain based data, and you want to provide context to your large language models or foundational models that to give an output, then you use a RAG based approach, where you store your contextual or an enterprise data into some source, converts it into embeddings that we're talking here about, store it into a vector DB. We'll talk about that flow. It is in the next slides, and then provide a context through it. So, and then comes the fine tuning and continued pre-training. So you don't need to get into, again, this two things are quite, if you look into the graph as well, the complexity, the quality, the cost and time, everything increases when you move from a RAG to a fine tuning and continued pre-training space, because you need to invest a lot of time. Fine tuning is nothing when you basically train your model, the already trained models into using a labeled data set. It's known as a fine tuning. Continued pre-training is when you basically go ahead and train your models, or again using a raw or an unlabeled data set. It's known as pre-training. But you don't need to get into the complexities of fine tuning or continued pre-training. Like I was saying, 90 or 95% of the use cases would easily be achieved using RAG plus the agentic AI. You don't need to get into that complexity. But yes, some of the use cases may require you to have a very domain specific or a very feature specific information which you need to get to the model, where context is also not working, or how you fetch it from agents are also not working. Then you need to get into the fine tuning and the continued pre-training. Got this? I think again, this also is again the basics of everything, because once you decide that you need to use a large language model and which layer you sit into, you need to say you've chosen what foundation model you're using. Now you need to decide that what method you need to use to basically talk to your foundational models or extract best output from your large language model. Make sense? You can get, I think again, prompt engineering is the same thing. Like I said, the input and output thing, the better input you give it to it, the better output you can expect from it. So this is some of the prompt engineering techniques that you have. So you have got zero shot, you've got few shot, you've got chain of thoughts, you've got reasoning and acting, you've got self-consistency. So basically when you give a direct input to your model saying that given this, it's a zero shot thing. Few shot, you also give it an instruction plus also provided this is how I expect my result to be. That's few shot prompting. Chain of thought, you break larger flow into a smaller fruit, make it into chain of thoughts, and then give an input to your foundational model and let it expect an output from it. That's the chain of thought. And then you've got reasoning and acting, that is the React way of doing it, where you provide instructions and the descriptions. So if you look into this thing, in this method, the agent is coming out. So again, because it's a reasoning and acting, it's not, like I said, LLM is usually a reactive approach of doing things. Whenever you have a approach which is proactive, which is not just reactive, agents will come in picture. So it's a reasoning and acting, because there needs to be an act that needs to be performed after you have reasoned something out there. So that's where the agents comes in picture. So you reason it using the prompt, you get the output from the model, and then based on the model you perform a particular task which your agent is defined to do, and then the output comes in. So that's the multiple prompt engineering techniques that you have. But yeah, just to start off, when you're starting your large language model or generative AI space journey, this is very important. It's not that this is very basic, this is also very important. You may get into RAG, you may get into the agentic AI, but still prompt sits at core of everything. You need to know how should you communicate with your large language model or a foundational model, you need to know that what is zero shot, what is few shot, which to use when, what is chain of thought, what is reasoning and acting, what is self consistency. So you need to know about these ways of doing it, and how do you prompt it, and when do you use what approach to basically prompt your large language models. Any doubts on this? Yeah. Perfect. So zero shot means anything. You directly give an input. Correct. I'll come in ChatGPT only. So for example, you ask something that create a diet chart for me. That could be a kind of a zero shot for you. Now if you, and it will give you a diet chart for you. Now if you tell it ChatGPT to say that create a diet chart for me, which basically gives me 4 meals a day, saying that a morning meal should be this and this and this. With an example, it would be a few shot thing. Make sense? Zero shot, few shot. Chain of thoughts, again with the same example, if you wanted to say that a chain of thought, that you get a diet plan and you're now telling ChatGPT to analyze it. So that could be a chain of thought saying that first break the number of times that the diet chart has, means 3. Once it is breaking down, the second step is to count the calories and then tell you about it. So that's mainly chain of thought. Chain of thoughts usually means that you're breaking down a larger process into smaller sub process and then doing all those processes. Make sense? And reacting means okay, reacting could be a situation that basically there's a diet chart that is again given to you by a dietitian. You query that what is the number of calories that they have suggested you, or what are the number of meals that he has suggested to you. Once you get that thing, you have also written that if the meals are 3 or 2 rather than 4, or if the number of calories are exceeding more than 5,000 or 6,000, send a message or send a call, or basically let me know to call the doctor or try to perform an action for a doctor to do it. That's your reaction, reasoning and acting to it. Now model can't do that. You need an agent to trigger something, which can, again, agent can't directly do it, but agent can have an action group to perform that action. That maybe triggering a call, or triggering maybe an API or anything, or maybe dropping a message to him, anything. So this all thing would be done by LLM, that analyzing your diet chart, seeing that what are the number of calories or what are the number of meals. If it exceeds that particular number, it will tell agent to perform that particular action, where agent will do it using some set of action group, some sort of APIs, or whatever is done. Maybe not directly possible to call, but yes, some set of action to do it there. Make sense? Self-consistency is again where the model knows what it is performing at the end of the day. It's again the same as a reasoning and yeah. So basically same thing. You tell model to a same instruction that there is a diet chart. This thing is there. Basically fetch this thing, and then so it will take all those indicators, maybe calorie, maybe number of meals, maybe number of the protein content. It will aggregate the result and will give the output to you. Reasoning in multiple components. So chain of thoughts could be similar to and self consistency is kind of similar thing. But what is the difference out here is the reasoning and the aggregation. If you look into the chain of thoughts, the instruction and question plus the example and CO2 indicator is same. Here also it's same, but at the end of the day, chain of thought directly gives the result, while it basically aggregates the result and give it. That's the self-consistency component of it. It gives a consistent result. That's the only difference. Got the point of each of example? Anybody has any doubt on the examples that we have talked about? Because again, this is going to be very common. Yes, you may have a high level use cases, but this is going to be the basics of always to communicate with a large language model. If you are writing any big agentic AI workflows also, you need to know how should you prompt your model. Because the better you prompt and the accurately you prompt your model, the accurate result you get from it. Anybody, any doubt on this? Perfect. So we also have a part of the Amazon Bedrock that is prompt management, which you can use to basically manage your prompts and prompt management, because a lot of times you need to have a prompt template that this my model should behave. So you can manage those prompts, and that's where the service comes in picture. Earlier we used to do it through multiple tools. Now it comes under the Bedrock console only. Okay, that's the RAG-based thing that we're talking here about. So when you talk about, can you go to the next slide and then we'll come to this slide. See, what happens in an RAG-based workflow, like you was asking, usually you have a knowledge bases out here. So knowledge bases are nothing. It's where your data is being stored in an vector DB format or in an embedding format. That's your knowledge bases for you. So what is happening if you look into the prompt part of it? This was there, it was directly going to this large language model and you're directly going to get a result out of it. Now in RAG based approach, what is happening? This is not 1, 2, 3. What is happening? First, somebody is putting a query, then it is going to a knowledge base because it needs to get the context from your enterprise data or your internal data to get the context, and then you can basically go ahead and this will give the context to the model, and then model will use the prompt plus the context to give the output at the end of the day. Okay, makes sense? So this model is usually is showing the embedding model, but yes, it remains the same thing. It gives a context and that basically queries it, and then you get an output at the end of the day. Now, if you go to this, go to the previous slide. So the kind of thing which you have created there the knowledge bases would be different, like I said. So either you can run there's an option to run your custom data sources of knowledge, so maybe a knowledge bases here, or it's better because your Bedrock is going to sit on AWS, correct? Your models are going to sit on. So if you are going to have your knowledge bases somewhere else, first thing, it's not going to add any value because you're going to get a high DTO charges, because every transaction, everything, context is going to go out of from the Amazon's VPC, come to it. So they're going to get an extra DTO charges out there, and it's not going to add any value. So if you have a similar setup, you can just replicate the simplest. For example, the vector DB that you're using right now is for example, consider it to be an OpenSearch. So you can directly replicate that OpenSearch and migrate your OpenSearch data to Amazon OpenSearch and can use it as a vector DB out there. So if you look into these vector searches, you've got OpenSearch, you've got Aurora Postgres, you've got DynamoDB, you've got MemoryDB, you've got Amazon Neptune, you've got DocumentDB. These are the databases that are enabled with vector search. On top are the natively supported Bedrock ones. That is, we recommend using VectorDB because OpenSearch, because OpenSearch supports the semantic searching, and it works on the KNN only, that is know your nearest neighbor. So the finding of semantic searching and finding of anything on an OpenSearch is pretty much very easier, and it's less latent. So if you are right now your knowledge base, whichever you are using in an OpenAI based thing, is an OpenSearch, you can directly migrate that to OpenSearch in AWS and can integrate. If you go to you've seen the Bedrock console of knowledge bases. I'll show you there. It's just a plug and play. You just need to create a data source. The embedding model will on its own would be implemented, and then it will store. So what happens? The workflow. If you go to the next slide again. So go to the next slide? Do we have another slide? Okay, go back to the. So what usually happens at this layer is that there is a data source, then there's another model, and then there's a vector DB. So what happens, for example, consider that I have a data source, I have an enterprise data, and I want my model to get a context from that. So model may not, your enterprise data may be in PDF, it may be structured, it may be unstructured, it may be photos, it may be videos. How would model know that what to get context from it? Model may not know this multiple components, this videos, images and everything. Then what happens? This data, either structured or unstructured, is being converted to an embeddings. Now, what are embeddings? It's just you can say a combinations of zeros and ones, how it's stored there. So these embeddings are basically stored into a vector DB. what converts your data sources, what your data, not data sources, but what converts your data. Now anything from structured to unstructured. When I say structured, that is PDF, JSON, Excel and everything. When I say unstructured, that could be anything, images, videos, CSV, anything. So these all data is get converted using another large language model or another foundational model from your data source to a embedding things using an embedding model. So there's a different model for it. Like I said in the starting only, each foundational model is trained to do a specific job. Either it is used for a data extraction, for a document summarization, for a chatbot creation, for a Q&A things. Likewise, there's another foundational model whose only job is to convert the data stored in data sources into embeddings. So that's what these model does. Right now we support two different kinds of embedding models. One from Amazon only, that is Titan. One from Cohere. So, and these both supports multi-model things. So you can have multiple formats of things to convert. And once it converts the data stored in data sources to embeddings, it lets it store into a vector DB. That is your knowledge base. Now why does it stores into a vector DB? Because since it's basically into a format of maybe 01 or other formats, when you store anything in a vector DB, the searching capability increases out there. Yes, different things would have different searching capabilities. Different would have a different searching capabilities, but yes, OpenSearch uses a KNN algorithm, using a semantic searching. Yeah, previous one. So yes, so that's where so these are the places where the embedding models store the embeddings. That's known as the vector DB, and now the model gets context from it. Model do not get context from your data source. It gets context from these things, because now model has a unique. Now model knows that I'll get this in this format only, and I'll know that format, because if I can speak a particular thing, I'll try to be in the same frequency of it. So example, model may not know a context that is coming from an image or a JSON or a PDF, but when it's converted into an embeddings, it knows the context coming from embeddings, and it will go ahead and add it, store embeddings it, and add the context of the embeddings through the direct things. So that's the way of it, and then use it. So this is about RAG thing. Do you guys got an idea about it? Why do we create RAG, or what is OpenSearch? What are embedding models? What are data sources that supported? Or you guys got any doubt on this? But yes, you can directly migrate your pipeline to AWS. It's again it's plug and play. I'll show you in my console. Creation of a knowledge base is just matter of a single minute. You just need to store. Yes, if you have a data source, for example, where your enterprise data is stored, which you are using for RAG, you can just try to migrate. Is it structured data or unstructured? So you can just directly migrate to S3 bucket, and then S3 bucket is a direct source there, and then you can create the pipeline from here. Because if you try to use a pipeline that is sitting in somewhere cloud, it will not add any value, but you'll get a lot of DTO charges, which is going to spike your bill only. Any doubts on this? Anybody? Anything? If you're getting any confusion, just feel free to ask anything, because this is all very basic that you need to understand when you're creating anything. RAG, agentic AI, and all those things. Anything? Perfect. So, like I was asking him, that is it a structured or unstructured data? So knowledge bases right now supports two different kind. When I say, you guys know about structured and unstructured data, correct? Structure, when data has a structure to it, that it is in a particular, like the data that is stored in relational databases, that is structured data. It has a relation to it. Each data has a relation to it. But if data doesn't have a structure to it, that is unstructured data. Data is in images, videos, PDFs and other things is the unstructured data. So Amazon knowledge bases directly does not, so supports both of them. So you can either use an unstructured data or you can store a structured data as well. So first we talk about that, how does it support a structured data? For example, you have a structured data that is stored in any of the relational data source, any of the relational database. How you can do is that you can just store that data into Amazon Redshift. If you've heard about Redshift, Redshift is a data warehouse solution that we offer to the customers. So you just need to connect your databases to the data warehouse, use Amazon SageMaker Lakehouse to have a partitioning right, schema right, and then to reduce the application, to use the application development from months to days. So if you wanted to use a structured data source, you can directly use a structured data source where your data is stored in relational data source. You can use that relational database connected to Amazon Redshift, which is again an Amazon based data warehousing solution. Once you do it, you can use your structured data source for adding a context to your for your generative AI application. Make sense to everybody? We are on the same page?